headlights cut through the dense fog like butter through overcooked pasta. It wasn't the kind of fog you saw rolling off the ocean on a chilly morning. This was thick, unnatural stuff, clinging to the windshield like a hungry ghost. It rolled in overnight, a silent gray curtain that swallowed our normally bustling seaside town hall. "This is creepy," I muttered, knuckles white-knuckled around the steering wheel. My wife, Sarah, sat beside me, her brow furrowed in concern. "It'll lift by morning," she said, her voice strained. A flicker of worry danced in her usually calm green eyes. We lived in Bayview, a picture-perfect coastal town where the biggest drama usually involved misses. Henderson's prize-winning hydrangeas getting trampled by a rogue squirrel. This was something else entirely. The radio crackled with static. Then, a voice, distorted and frantic, burst through the speakers. Don't let it in." The voice choked out, followed by a blood-curdling scream. The radio sputtered and died, leaving us in an unsettling silence, broken only by the rhythmic swipe of the windshield wipers. My stomach churned. The scream, it wasn't coming from the radio. It came from somewhere outside. Swallowed by the hungry fog, we pulled into our driveway, the garage door refusing to budge under the weight of the unnatural mist. Stepping out of the car was like stepping into another world. The normally vibrant sounds of seagulls and crashing waves were replaced by a deadening silence. The world was muted, muffled by the thick fog that seemed to press in on us from all sides. "John? Sarah?" A voice called out, a tremor of fear in it. It was Mrs. Henderson, her usually bright smile replaced by a mask of terror. "We're here, Martha," I shouted back, my voice distorted by the fog. "What's going on?" "Mr. Davis, he's gone," she whimpered. "Went outside to check his mailbox and, well..." She didn't need to finish the sentence. The absence of Mr. Davis's grumpy morning routine spoke volumes. Panic gnawed at me. Mr. Davis wasn't the adventurous type. There was no way he would have willingly ventured out into this unnatural fog. News spread like wildfire through the town, fueled by panicked texts and frantic phone calls. More people were missing. Old Mrs. Peabody, the mailman, even young Tommy, who was always chasing pigeons in the square. Each disappearance followed the same pattern. A muffled scream, then silence. The town sheriff, a burly man with a handlebar mustache and a booming voice, tried to maintain order, but even his bravado seemed to falter in the face of the unseen terror. Days bled into nights, the fog clinging stubbornly to the town. Supplies dwindled, the quiet punctuated only by the mournful cries of gulls circling unseen rooftops. Fear became a constant companion, a cold, clammy hand gripping our hearts point one by one. The power flickered and died, plunging Bayview into an even deeper abyss. We huddled in our living room by the flickering gaslight, the shadows cast by the dancing flames stretching and twisting on the walls like malevolent spirits. A sudden thump from outside sent shivers down my spine. Sarah clutched my arm, her eyes wide with terror. We sat frozen, listening to the sound of something moving in the fog outside. It was getting closer. The rhythmic thudding seemed to follow a specific path, a path leading directly to our house. The rhythmic thudding against the front door escalated into a relentless pounding. Each booming impact vibrated through the floorboards, tightening the knot of fear in my gut. Sarah whimpered, burying her face in my chest. "We can't just leave them out there," I whispered, the words tasting like ashes on my tongue. Even as I spoke, reason warred with a primal urge to hunker down and wait for the nightmare to pass. "John, it's not human," Sarah whispered back, her voice trembling. "It could be anything." A horrifying image flashed in my mind. Mr. Davis, Mrs. Peabody, Tommy, their faces contorted in silent screams before being swallowed by the fog. The thought of a similar fate for Sarah chilled me to the core. Suddenly, a memory surfaced from the dusty corners of my mind. Back in college, I had a roommate obsessed with conspiracy theories. One of his wilder tales involved a frequency disruptor, a cobbled-together device he swore could scramble radio signals and mess with electronic equipment. While I never took him seriously, the memory sparked an idea. "Just stay here," I instructed, my voice surprisingly steady. Sarah looked at me with a mix of fear and defiance, but she didn't argue. I rummaged through the basement, my heart hammering against my ribs. After what felt like an eternity, I unearthed a box of dusty electronics left behind by a tech-savvy college buddy who used to visit. Wires, circuit boards, and a half-assembled contraption stared back at me. It wasn't pretty, but with a surge of desperate hope, I recognized the core components of the frequency disruptor. Working by memory and guided by flickering flashlight beams, I spent the next agonizing hour assembling the device. Sweat beaded on my forehead, and my hands trembled with nervous energy. Finally, with a makeshift antenna fashioned from a coat hanger, the contraption stood before me, a testament to my desperation more than engineering prowess. Taking a deep breath, I flipped a switch. A faint whirring sound filled the room, and a series of flickering lights on the device indicated something was happening. The pounding on the front door stopped. An unnerving silence descended, broken only by the whirring of the makeshift disruptor. We waited, anticipation stretching into agonizing minutes. Then, from the depths of the fog, a guttural shriek tore through the night. It wasn't a human sound, but a primal howl of frustration and pain. The shriek echoed through the town, followed by a series of unsettling thumps and scrapes as if something large and heavy was stumbling away from our house. After a seemingly endless wait, the thumps faded, replaced by an eerie silence. I cautiously switched off the disruptor, the silence pressing down on us with renewed intensity. We didn't sleep that night. Every creak of the floorboards, every gust of wind against the windows sent our hearts racing. But as the first rays of dawn peeked through the thinning fog, a sliver of hope broke through the darkness. The fog was receding. Slowly, tentatively, it began to lift, revealing a devastated town. Doors hung open, windows lay shattered, and an unsettling emptiness pervaded the streets. Cautiously, we ventured outside, the cool morning air washing over us. As we walked through the wreckage, a sense of dread clung to us. Were we the only ones left? Had the creature simply moved on to another unsuspecting town, leaving Bayview as a chilling testament to its power? The answer came in the form of a faint cough from beneath a pile of debris. We scrambled towards the sound, unearthing a dazed and disoriented Mrs. Peabody. Relief flooded through me, quickly followed by a wave of questions. There were others, it turned out. Survivors who had barricaded themselves in their homes, waiting for the nightmare to end. The town was devastated, yet a spark of life remained. The next few days were a blur of activity. Search parties were organized, the injured tended to, and the enormity of the situation began to sink in. The cause of the fog, the creature that lurked within, remained a mystery. The frequency disruptor became a local legend, a symbol of defiance against the unknown. While I knew it was likely just a lucky coincidence, the grateful townspeople insisted it had saved us. News of the unnatural fog and the frequency disruptor spread like wildfire. Scientists flocked to the town, eager to study the remnants of the fog and the device that supposedly repelled it. However, their tests yielded little. The fog's composition remained an enigma, and the disruptor, upon closer inspection, turned out to be a mess of mismatched wires and outdated components. The prevailing opinion was that it was pure coincidence, but the townspeople clung to the idea of the disruptor as a symbol of hope. Months passed. Bayview slowly rebuilt, the trauma etched on the faces of its residents a constant reminder of the horror they had faced. The fog never fully returned, but a thick mist would occasionally roll in from the ocean, sending shivers down spines and prompting nervous glances towards the horizon. One such evening, as the mist swirled around the town square, a familiar frantic pounding echoed through my house. It wasn't the front door this time, but the back door leading down to the basement. Grabbing a flashlight, I raced down the creaky steps, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm. There, huddled in the corner of the cold, damp basement, sat Sarah, her face pale and her eyes wide with terror. "John," she gasped, her voice barely a whisper. "It's back, the signal, it's coming from the lighthouse." My blood ran cold. The lighthouse, perched at the edge of town, had been deactivated after the fog incident. Why would a signal be coming from there now? Ignoring the gnawing fear in my stomach, I followed Sarah back upstairs. We grabbed the makeshift disruptor, more out of desperation than hope, and raced towards the lighthouse. The mist thickened as we neared, swirling around our legs like a living entity. The lighthouse stood tall and imposing, its single eye dark against the swirling gray. A faint rhythmic hum emanated from its base, pulsing through the mist with a malevolent energy. We reached the heavy metal door and Sarah fumbled with the lock. It wouldn't budge. Panic choked me as we heard a grinding sound from above. The lighthouse's light, usually silent and watchful, began to rotate, casting an eerie beam that sliced through the mist. Suddenly, the door burst open. A figure emerged from the darkness, shrouded in shadow. It was tall and gaunt, its movements jerky and unnatural. A low, guttural growl emanated from its throat, not a human sound, but a chilling echo of the creature from the fog. Adrenaline surged through me. With a desperate cry, I pointed the disruptor at the figure and flipped the switch. The device whirred to life, the flickering lights casting an erratic glow. The figure recoiled, shielding its head with a long, clawed hand. A shriek, like nails on a chalkboard, ripped through the night. The lighthouse light sputtered and died, plunging us into darkness. We wrestled with the figure, a desperate struggle against an unseen, inhuman force. The disruptor felt like a flimsy shield against the creature's raw power. Just as despair threatened to consume me, a blinding light erupted from within the lighthouse. A high-pitched whine filled the air, emanating from a battered satellite dish mounted on the roof, now aimed directly at the figure. The creature shrieked again, a sound of pure agony, as it recoiled from the unseen energy. With a final, earth-shaking thud, the figure collapsed onto the metal deck. Silence descended, broken only by our ragged gasps. Dazed and disoriented, we stumbled out of the lighthouse and back towards town. The mist was thinning, the satellite dish's light cutting through it like a celestial sword. As the sun peeked over the horizon, bathing Bayview in a warm orange glow, we learned the full story. The scientists, unable to explain the fog, had returned with a team of engineers and a powerful prototype satellite specifically designed to disrupt unknown frequencies. They had monitored the strange signal emanating from the lighthouse and used it to lure the creature back, hoping to capture and study it.